What happens when the largest economy in the world goes bankrupt with $34 trillion in debt? Nothing. Because they don't pay the bill, you do. If you or I go into debt and cannot pay, the consequences are immediate and brutal. The bank takes our house, they repossess our car, they destroy our credit score, and they strip away our future. We are held accountable to the penny. But when the government overspends by trillions of dollars, when they fund endless wars, corporate bailouts, and a bloated system that produces nothing of actual value, they do not declare bankruptcy. They do not lose their homes. Instead, they execute the most brilliant, premeditated, and invisible heist in human history. A bank robber uses a gun to steal your money, but a central bank uses policy. They don't need to break into your house in the dead of night. They don't need to hack your bank account. They simply steal the purchasing power of your money while it is still sitting safely in your wallet. They steal the hours of your life you traded to earn that currency. Every great crime needs an alibi, a story to tell the public, so they don't look too closely at the evidence. For decades, the media and the political elite have told you that inflation is a tragic accident. They tell you it is a byproduct of supply chain disruptions, greedy corporations raising prices, global conflicts, or just the natural cycle of a growing economy. This is a lie. It is a carefully constructed narrative designed to keep you looking at the symptoms rather than the disease. To find the true scene of the crime, we have to go back to the year 1971. This was the exact moment the heist was authorized, as President Richard Nixon permanently removed the United States dollar from the gold standard. Before 1971, governments were disciplined by physical reality. They could not spend more than the gold they held in their vaults because money represented actual, physical human labor and scarce resources. But once that tether was cut, money became an illusion. It became fiat, currency backed by absolutely nothing but the promise of the politicians who print it, and politicians always break their promises. Since that day, the system has operated on a foundational flaw, the belief that you can create infinite money on a planet with finite resources. But the elites couldn't just tell the public their money was losing value every single day. They needed a smokescreen, and they created one. They called it the CPI, or the Consumer Price Index. The government tells you inflation is at 3% or maybe 5%. But you look at your grocery bill, your rent, the cost of a new car, and the cost of healthcare, and you know the math doesn't make sense. That is because the CPI is a manipulated metric. Over the years, they have constantly changed the formula of how inflation is calculated to hide the true damage. They substitute expensive items for cheaper ones. If beef gets too expensive, the formula assumes you will just eat chicken, so inflation magically goes down on paper. They exclude the very things you need to survive, like energy and housing, to present a number that pacifies the masses. While they tell you inflation is under control, the true cost of living is rising at double digits, quietly liquidating the middle class. In every heist, the criminals need a getaway vehicle, a mechanism to extract the wealth and move it before the victims even realize they've been robbed. In our modern economic system, that vehicle is the central bank, the Federal Reserve. Most people believe the Federal Reserve is a government institution that exists to protect the economy, but it is actually a highly secretive, independent entity that controls the cost and the supply of money. And when the government needs trillions of dollars to fund overseas wars, bail out failing banks, or mask a collapsing economy, they do not tax the rich because the rich wouldn't allow it. And they don't tax the middle class directly, because that would cause a revolution. Instead, they hit print. But here is the darkest secret of macroeconomics, a secret they intentionally keep out of standard education. It is called the Cantillon Effect. Imagine a massive fountain of newly printed trillions of dollars. Who gets to stand closest to the water? When the Federal Reserve creates money out of thin air, it doesn't go into your bank account, and it doesn't go to the small business owner struggling to pay rent. The new money is injected directly into the financial system, going to the mega banks, the Wall Street hedge funds, and the trillion-dollar asset managers. Because they receive this new money first, they get to spend it before prices have adjusted in the real economy. They use this practically free capital, borrowed at 0 or near 0% interest, to buy up real estate, massive corporate stocks, and hard assets. By the time that newly printed money circulates through the economy and finally reaches your paycheck 2 years later, the damage is already done. The prices of homes, food, and energy have skyrocketed, and your purchasing power has been completely diluted to fund their bailouts and their bonuses. The Cantillon Effect guarantees that those closest to the money printer get infinitely richer, while those furthest away, the working class who trade their time for a fixed salary, are mathematically guaranteed to get poorer. You are forced to borrow money at 24% interest on a credit card just to buy groceries, while institutional investors borrow at 2% to buy the neighborhood you live in. You are bleeding out, and they are holding the knife. Look at this number, $34 trillion, and growing by $1 trillion every 100 days. The human brain is not equipped to comprehend a number this large. If you earned $1 every single second, it would take you over 1,000,000 years to pay off just a fraction of this debt. It is not just a deficit. It is a mathematical black hole, and it has reached the point of no return. For decades, politicians kicked the can down the road, borrowing from the future to create the illusion of prosperity today. But the future has finally arrived, and we have entered the final stage of a debt spiral. The United States government now spends more money just paying the interest on its national debt than it spends on its entire national defense budget. Let that sink in. The largest military superpower in human history is now paying more to its creditors than to its soldiers. So, how do they solve it? It is mathematically impossible to pay this back through taxation. Even if the government taxed 100% of the wealth of every billionaire in America, it wouldn't even make a dent in the principal balance. They cannot grow their way out of it, because the debt is growing exponentially faster than the economy. There is only one mathematical outcome remaining, the final move in the playbook of every collapsing empire in history. They have to inflate the debt away. They have to keep the money printer running permanently. They will intentionally devalue the currency so that the trillions they owe become worthless on paper. But as they burn the debt, they burn your savings, your retirement, and your purchasing power along with it. The elites know the math, the politicians know the math, and the trillion-dollar asset managers know exactly how this ends. So, what is their end game? And if the fiat currency is destined to collapse under the weight of $34 trillion of debt, how does the smart money survive the crash? They execute an escape plan, rotating out of the system entirely. While retail investors and the middle class are told to hold cash in their bank accounts or blindly trust their 401k pension funds, the billionaires and central banks of the world are quietly dumping paper assets. They are buying physical gold at record levels, and they are acquiring sovereign land, energy infrastructure, and water rights. They are converting infinite, worthless paper into finite, physical reality. They are building financial lifeboats and locking the doors, all while standing on the deck of a sinking ship, telling the middle class that the economy has never been stronger. The debt crisis is not a future event waiting to happen. It is happening right now. It is the reason your grocery bill doubled, and the reason you can no longer afford to buy a home. In our last documentary, we exposed how Wall Street is actively buying up the neighborhoods you grew up in. But the truth is much darker. They aren't just taking your property. Through inflation, endless money printing, and a $34 trillion debt trap, they are taking the value of your time. They are taking your freedom. The greatest wealth transfer in human history is not a conspiracy theory. It is a mathematical certainty. You can either stay distracted by the political circus, or you can follow the smart money and learn how the system actually works. Subscribe to The Wealth Archives and learn the rules of the game before you become the casualty.